Hello, welcome to the Well After Hours. I'm your host, Beverly Allen. Thank you for being with us again on another Thursday at the Well. And we're back. And I have invited my guest back that was with us, Dr. Angela Clack, who helped us when I did this piece on traumatizing times. And I'm so glad to be able to welcome Dr. Clack back because now that we're moving forward um, into more trauma in society with all the other issues we're dealing with, even though they say, the rate is going down at which people were, going to hospitals and getting sick and even transitioning out of life, that things are somewhat on, slowing down. But it doesn't mean we can slow down our pace and what we're trying to do. In fact, I guess we really have to kind of rev up what we were doing even more so now than even before. So welcome back, Dr. Clack. I'm glad that you're here as our expert today that can help us, get through this. And I didn't get a chance when you were here the last time to really go into detail or even really mention the book that you've done that I have had a little privilege to read into, that just really stirred me up and opened up other questions for you that we really need you to talk today. And the title of the book is Women of Color Talk, right? Am I correct?
That
Yeah,
is
Women of
correct.
Color Talk. And can you show the viewers a copy of your
Yes.
book? Yes, beautiful. I love the color. It's just so
Yeah.
beautiful, eye-catching. It really says a lot volumes. And
Yes.
can you tell me, when we talk about women of color, can you express who that encompasses, the group, or you know the segment of women that you're speaking about?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. And I'm always honored to be a part of your platform, Evangelist. So thank you so much for having me back. And I
Oh,
think
my
that's a
pleasure.
great place to start because when I was writing the book, there are a lot of people who have different perspectives on language around whether we say Black women, brown women, African American or African women, women from the African diaspora. So there's so many different ways. And so for me, when I say women of color, and I had to spell it out in the preface of my book, I'm referring to Black, African American, and brown, Hispanic, and Black women. That is the crux of the book. I wish that I had more time in my book to do research on women of Caribbean descent and other ethnicities of decolonized folks, but I knew the breadth of it would take away from my experience. It was just
Uh,
beyond the work that I do because I see Black and brown women, American born, some Caribbean born, but to do justice to reaching women of color more globally, it would be beyond what I could have done
wow.
authentically.
Yeah. Wow. For the viewers that maybe didn't view the show the last time when you were on it, I just want to update them a little bit on your bio so they understand
Sure.
your expertise. And
Okay.
so I want to tell you, viewers of the Well, today that we are privileged to have Dr. Angela Roman Clack, who is a licensed psychotherapist at Clack Associates LLC, a private practice outpatient counseling agency in Southern New Jersey. She has been working in the mental health field for more than 25 years, and Dr. Clack earned her doctorate in 2002 with a degree in clinical psychology from Argosy University in Washington, D.C. Dr. Clack is passionate about discussing mental health and wellness. She holds a special place in her heart for women who were abused, hurt, and traumatized, and who desire healed, healthy, and whole. To be healed, healthy, and whole. She has a broad range of public speaking experiences, including community events, radio and internet shows, women's empowerment groups, panel discussions, church and school settings, and collaborations with mental health advocacy organizations and nonprofit community organizations. With her highly diverse clinical experiences and training in adult, child, adolescent, and forensic settings, she is able to discuss a broad range of topics. Dr. Clack's love for the Lord has led her to integrate the spiritual with the natural in her work as she seeks to walk in the place and purpose God has called her to help others live out their destiny. Fantastic. I tell you, I'm so happy to have you here. back here again. And you know, there was another thing that when I read in your book, you know, people hear about trauma, and I know I asked you to say that before, but I'm gonna ask you to say that before I even get to this next question. Could you define what trauma is? Because sometimes people are traumatized by things and they don't even know that they are. We don't know sometimes, you know.
I think it's an excellent place to start. People have different experiences, and those experiences that overwhelm their ability to cope can be traumatic. So trauma is defined by the experience of the survivor. So, and I say that because what could be traumatic for you may not be traumatic for me, and vice versa. So someone may be in a car accident and subsequently never drive again. And other people may say, I can't believe she's been driving for 30 years and now she has an accident and she doesn't want to drive anymore. And you may not think that that's traumatic, but for her or him, whoever that person is, that was traumatic. And we don't get to define trauma for other people. And so that person may not even think they were traumatized, but it impaired their ability to ever want to get behind the wheel again. That means something traumatic has happened. And
Mm,
so we do want people to give it a name. It's trauma. And it can be a scary word for some people for the first time, thinking that what they grew up in is traumatic, or the dynamics that they endured as a child is traumatic. What it is, and we want people to be able to embrace that word and begin to heal. So that's trauma can go from a little t, from something that could be perceived by some as small, to a big trauma. So, and then you can have multiple traumas in between. So little t's, enough of them will
mhm.
feel like a big traumatic event in someone's life.
That's excellent. And you know, sometimes when we're together as women, sometimes even young girls, is that when they're sharing like experiences, somebody else will make light of that. That's why I'm glad you said, like, my trauma may not be your trauma and your trauma may not be mine. And they say, oh, girl, please, I went through that too. And then that other person feels bad as though, you know, maybe they shouldn't feel that way, but that's not true. You know, everything's affect us each differently,
Yes.
as you would say, you know. I like from your book, you did a quote by Dorothy Height, and it was so excellent. I have to quote it for my viewers. It says, greatness is not measured by what a man or woman accomplishes, but by the opposition he or she has overcome to reach his goals. That says so much right there, because so many times as women, we don't give ourselves credit for what we get over or how we
Mhm.
move on, even if we're not over it. But you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, you deal with it and you keep going, you know, that you haven't given up. Sometimes it's just a miracle that you haven't even given up,
Right. That's
really,
right.
where you are, you know, that you
That's
keep on going, you keep raising your children.
yeah,
Even though things are just so bad and you just don't, you find a way somehow to make it through. And
absolutely.
yeah, and you deserve a badge and a medal, just,
Yes.
you know, really. So
To still
but
be
you know,
moving.
yeah. So I love that you put that in there. So I mean, you know, every woman has her own story, but I mean,
Hmm.
what we're dealing with now, as we move forward, you can name all of the things that maybe we will be dealing with, and maybe how, as small or as simple as it might seem, things that we can do that can help us to get through mentally and emotionally, even as women of faith, you
Yeah.
know, because um, just because we have faith doesn't mean that God doesn't work through natural solutions to help us. He doesn't always have to perform the supernatural when He has given us natural means to kind of help us. And I think that
Absolutely.
mental health through counseling is one of those natural means that's from someone who understands us totally, you know, mind, body, soul, and spirit. So I'll let you take it away and discuss that in
Yeah,
itself.
I think for me that when I decided to write the book, the reason why I wrote the book, it wasn't because I set out to be an author, because certainly in graduate school, I thought that I would just be a clinician and do
Mm,
my therapy and do my thing. And I was doing some shifting in my practice, and I had met with a coach. I was working with a coach around, I want to do some new things with my practice. I need to do some business and strategy and things like that. And she asked me a question, and she said, and I'm going to paraphrase our conversation. And she goes, well, what is it that you feel is bogging you down to the point you cannot focus on business building while also doing your work? And I said, I don't want to stop doing the clinical piece to take on the business end, but I'm a business owner, so I have to be able to do both. And they don't teach you how to be a business owner in graduate school. So she says, well, tell me what's happening. And I said, I have so many clients that I can barely see who I'm seeing now to take on more. And I said, I have this passion to work with Black women. And she says, well, you can't see everybody. And I said, I know I cannot. And she goes, have you ever thought about what you're birthing and giving people in terms of your work with them? Have you ever thought about putting it in a book? She goes, because there are some people you're not going to reach anyway who aren't going to come in. But if you put it in a book, if you put it in one place,
Wow.
it may be an introduction enough for them to seek help, even if it's not with you. And of course, I hadn't thought about being an author. And so she really worked with me around first getting past my own self-limiting beliefs that I could do this. And then I started it, and it took me 2 years of picking it up, putting it down, picking it up. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I kept doing more research. I kept looking for more information. And finally, she was like, stop, get it done, get it written. You're spending too much time on this. And she goes, we got to get it done. And then I did, when we put in some other coaching strategies to help me get it done, because it needed to be out. I was taking too long. And then the other thing that was doing, I was still seeing people. So she goes, okay, you got to figure out something here. You can't keep doing all this work and get your book done. So we figured out some ways for me to do a little bit of a hiatus to get the work done. But it meant so much to me that I wanted to put my whole heart into it. And so I wrote it. I had an editor. I had another editor. I had to rewrite this thing twice. And as an author, you probably know, no one wants to hear that they need to rewrite something, because when you think you've done it and you're done, and then someone says, but X, Y, and Z, you're like, okay, no, I'm not doing it. No, I'm not. But after I reread the whole thing myself twice, I understood and I was obedient. I had to figure out how to tailor it to the women who would read it and not to clinicians only. Coming from the world of being a researcher and clinician, it was a lot of clinical at first, and they're like, good stuff, but they ain't reading that. Okay. So I went back and I thought about all the women that I've worked with, my colleagues, myself, inserted that into the book. And so the book is about the narratives. That means the stories that women have shared with my clinical information. So it is a sort of like a beautiful blending. I got my world in there, and then I got the world of the researcher and the clinician and the practitioner. So it meant that much to me to get this book in a place into the hands of Black and brown women who traditionally have been told that psychotherapy is not for us. You would be seen as weak. You're seen as crazy. It's for privileged white women. We don't tell our family secrets. You suffer in silence. And one of the chapters that I knew that I had to include is exactly what you were saying, is about the message that the church is giving. And so many of the women that I worked with, the message that they were receiving was that you should just pray about it. You don't need to go outside that, go speak to your pastor. You don't need to see someone. You don't need medication. It was a lot of discouragement around mental health work. I know that now in the last 10 years, we're getting better with the faith community blending and accepting mental health, but it's still not there. I still have plenty of women who are discouraged by people who say, if you do that, that means your faith is weak. You're not working your faith. Like there are still messages that are from the church and the faith community that is discouraging women, particularly women of color, because Black women, the church has been the place where we have gone to as a Black family since before civil rights and slavery. That's where we got our support. That's where we got our sustenance. That's where we got our nurturance, was from the word of God and being in fellowship with one another. But the Black church, as it began to get more organized, was starting to push out people who did not belong. And that would have been the mental health folks. So we don't tell our business, just pray about it. Now, I will say for me also, I have evolved in terms of how I've looked at it, because I do believe that there are some people who need both. They need deliverance and they need mental health care. And then there's some who need one before the other, or they need it, so I know that there's a place for both. So it's not to discount church. It's to say and. So it's prayer and therapy, or maybe prayer, therapy, and medication, or it's deliverance and therapy. It's not or, it's and. But we want, more and more faith communities to be accepting that mental health is real. Depression is real. Trauma is real. And the other thing that I do want to speak to women is that people will call what they've been through church hurt. And it will stop them from seeking a church home because they may have been hurt in another church. And so we want them to say, it isn't necessarily the word church hurt, it's people hurt, but it happened in the context of the fellowship and the ministry. So we don't want you to say church and think, well, now I can't go to any church because every church will be this way. But it's people hurt, and church has been the place where you are the victim. So I'm always keen to language and how people give power to language and words.
Yeah, it's really something, because oftentimes, like, especially when it comes to the church, a doctor can do us badly, but we'll find another doctor. But when something happens in the church, we just back away as though there is no other, place aside from where you were hurt, to actually get help, because you have to nurture your spirit as well as your,
Yes.
physical body. And that's where it is so important for, like yourself, who is a Christian counselor, who understands how to join your faith in God along with how he created us. So you
Absolutely.
understand it. As the Bible says, in all thy getting, get an understanding. Understand that God has given you the ability to have thought, and with every thought, there is an emotion attached to that thought, and with every emotion comes an attitude which can produce a behavior. And when you understand that, that you all can bring out very clearly for us, because you understand all the inner workings of how to integrate that and understand that God really does want you whole and healthy. But there are some things we have to put in place in order to see that done, and that it, like you said, it's not either or. We don't have to choose one over the other. And I think that's because I think as pastors, and you can attest to this, because I think we even mentioned it last time, is that they can only go, in a sense, so far. Because if they're not trained or skilled as you are, or licensed, they could take a bad situation and make it worse instead of better, because there are lines that they should not cross, but can work in unison with, as you say, a counselor to help, bring that person to wholeness or deliverance, and help that person understand what they're walking through, that they're not going crazy, that there are just there's normal processes in going through life and trauma that happen,
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. Yes.
I think that you offer so many different services, but it would be nice, as you say, now that you've written this fantastic book, that people can actually have something in their hands to read that would, like you say, it's like almost like a course. It really is. I mean, it's so thorough that when you read it, you can actually, oh my goodness, so this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm going through,
Yes.
and yeah, all that you did. So all of that research and everything you did, I don't know how long, like you said, 2 years to write the book, but I don't know how much time did it take to gather all that, because like you said, there was very little available, as you said, in the beginning, where we were as women of color. And sometimes I know all women can go through divorce, abuse, but we can all handle it a different way according to our environment and things that we're going through at the time. You know what I mean? Like maybe somebody who has experienced racism that has affected their economic situation
Mm-hmm.
can can't someone else might not be able to relate to that except someone who understands that whole process.
Right. So as Black and brown women, we live
Yeah,
racialized lives. We
yeah.
live by our skin color. And so, so many perceptions and experiences and prejudgments and discrimination. So a lot of that has fed into our mental health over time. And so we have thought that we shouldn't go see someone who doesn't look like us because they won't understand. And I have heard so many times where women have attempted to step into spaces with white women and they have not been treated well. And I don't mean bad, I mean treated well in that they don't disclose a lot because they could never get to the place where they could trust that woman enough with their stories and with their experiences to be able to benefit from therapy. You know, when I was in graduate school, we're talking some moons ago, but um, there wasn't a lot of therapists of color. There just wasn't. We have a whole lot of more women than men now who are clinicians of color, and particularly Black clinicians. A whole lot more of us who are now available and we are accessible to our communities. There are a whole lot more than when I was in graduate school. And so there were no courses around how do you work with people of color. You took one course and it taught all minorities or all marginalized or ethnicity. There was one course. It definitely didn't talk about how to work with them. It just says these are the statistics. This is some of the dynamics that happen, but it never got into the meat of it, which you never get from books anyway. You really have to do this work to get what you need to do. You need to kind of get in there and be immersed in the culture. And now we're learning so much more about how to work with people of color, whether you're an Asian therapist, a Black therapist, and you're working with your group, you know, because you live some of those experiences. Now, that's not to say that I don't represent all Black women. So there are some Black women who say, hey, she doesn't work for me. I'm not for everybody, right? And there are some Black women who say, I would rather work with a white woman. No problem with that. That's fine. People definitely have to be comfortable with their choices. But largely, my experience has been that we want people who have someone who has quality, cultural competence, knowledge, and sensitivity enough to attune to that Black woman. And if you don't, we encourage white women and white men to refer that woman to someone who can help her. You may be able to take them so far on some issues, but they won't go with you on every issue.
Can you tell me, now that you mentioned how they say some would say, I prefer to go to a Caucasian counselor, did they ever express why they felt
Yeah.
that that person could understand them better?
You know
Why?
why? Because um it's usually someone who thinks that a lot of people know them, people of color know them, and they know that this white woman has no idea who they are, no idea of their status, no idea that they're a minister, a administrator at the local whatever. So they'll go somewhere where they think no one knows them. They'll go to the sticks into the woods because they can feel free that they won't run into anybody that they know. That same therapist is not seeing somebody that they see. It's more about anonymity
I was
than
getting
it,
ready to say that's what it is about, Anna. Yeah, not incompetence, but anonymity. They feel safe. They feel too connected because you never know who's in whose
that's
circle.
right. That's it. That is it.
I
Yes.
get it. Well, that okay. Now that's a little more justifiable. I could understand that, you know. But you know what? And I guess that's where I guess word of mouth comes in because you have to trust somebody,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
And is it do company insurances make provision? And because I don't know, I mean, I know some counselors, and some of them say that people's insurance doesn't even allow them to go to counseling. Period. To anybody, it doesn't cover that. Is that a big issue too, as well as like,
Well,
I mean,
it shouldn't be anymore. The only way that that should still be happening. So years back, there was much more limitations on where people could go if it didn't fit into the premium or the choice and package people had. Now we have the parity law that says mental health has to be treated as physical health. So people should have access to mental health just like they do physical health. The difference are some providers may not be a part of your insurance plan. So if you have a Blue Card or you have an Aetna and this provider only takes Cigna or United, it's not that you can't see that person, it's that they're not going to cover you if you do, meaning you pay out of pocket, you use your out-of-network benefits, you invest in yourself financially and say, well, I don't care that you don't cover it, I'm still going to pay for it.
So with most of the research that you have now gathered and it's in a book, what has it really taught you, or what would you say is one of the main, or a few of the main things, it's probably not just one, but a few of the main things that it has taught you to be able to help women of color?
Wow. One, I have not met one Black woman, brown woman who has not had some experience of trauma. I have not. And I have seen hundreds of women in my career, and often it's intergenerational. So many women do not talk about the abuse up front. We're together sometimes for 1 year, 2 years before they are even ready to disclose, even with me, a woman who looks like them, enough to talk about the sexual abuse or domestic violence that they've endured. And often the next thing they share is that my mother was a victim too. And it was the uncles and men in our family that we fought off. So there is intergenerational trauma at numbers we can't probably even put our fingers on at this point. So that's one thing, that there is trauma there, but that the goal is to build a connection and a trusting relationship so the client can feel like, so she can feel like she can share with you and not feel like her business will be on the church news bulletin in next week or with her girlfriend. They need a trusted, safe space to have these kind of conversations. So that's, and the other thing I found is that women need a voice. Speak about trauma, and they have not had that voice. And I feel like therapists who are trauma experts, because not everyone is a trauma expert. A lot of people do general counseling and they're good at what they do. But if you're a trauma expert, you give voice to that trauma that they could not. And it validates what they're feeling, how it changed and shifted who they see themselves, the narrative that they've lived by for 30 years, 40 years, sometimes 50 years. So for me, the most important lesson I've learned is how to give voice to their experience.
Wow. In one of your chapters, it says, "My history is not my destiny." And it's about the courage to heal. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, picking up the phone to even make an appointment is courageous. I've met women who have said to me, it took a lot for me to get here. I've called you. Do you remember me? And I'm like, I don't. Were you here? And they're like, no. I called to set an appointment. I just never came. Even picking up the phone is a courageous move to say, I'm ready to do this work. I'm ready to heal. And then to begin the process that whatever experiences you've had, what you've been through, it doesn't define who you are. But they've worn that cloak of depression, that cloak of being a victim, the cloak of all of the judgments and narratives that people have put upon them for so long that they feel like it's just who they are. And so we kind of unpack it one layer at a time. And it takes a lot of courage to unpack that and to be exposed for someone else to know their story. It takes a lot of courage.
Wow, that is so true. And that first step is the biggest step. Even if it does take time getting to where you'd like them to go, that first step, just taking a first step, that's that leap of faith.
I'm so glad you said that, because one of the things I spend a lot of time in the beginning doing is saying that is okay. Because what has happened is that they have waited so long that they've got themselves in a really, really dark place, and it takes us longer to get them through that space. And they keep beating themselves up. I should have did this 2 years ago. I should have did this once. And I said, you know what? We all could have, should have did a lot of things. We're here now, and to beat yourself up about something that we can't undo, we can't go backwards, is keeping you stuck in that story. So
Mhm.
you're here now. Let's start your new beginning. And let's talk about how do we get you through that to start to rewrite all the possibilities that you can have in your life and how you can live with a new narrative. And one of those things is encouraging. I need women to start being compassionate with themselves. We're so compassionate with everybody else. We give everybody passes. We give everybody grace. We give everybody a second, fourth, 10, 100 chances. Except when it
Everybody.
comes to us, everybody.
Mhm,
Except
mhm.
when it comes to us. We don't think we can make mistakes, and the expectations we put on ourselves sometimes are so great that we feel like we're not meeting anybody's expectations and plus our own, and we stay stuck. That's how you get stuck. Because
Mhm.
you just feel like I can't do this right. I can't do that right. Well, I don't, by whose standards are you not doing those things right? So kind of like they're still living that old story in their head.
Yeah, especially if they saw mama or grandmama or auntie
Yeah.
go through, they feel like, oh, I'm supposed to be strong like them. I'm supposed to, bear it all on my shoulders, realizing
Yeah.
that this is different times.
This is a different time. And strength is not synonymous with struggle. I think people think that the only way you get strong is you have to struggle, and you don't. You've already done the struggling.
Mhm.
Now it's time to build your strength in a different way. So we don't have to say, well, my mom went through this and my grandmom, and I guess I have to go through this to be. No, that is not the narrative we want women, particularly Black women, to live by anymore. That's an old narrative. Mm-mm.
Wow. That says so much what you just brought out. Oh my goodness. It is unbelievable. But also too is that you mentioned kind of like towards the end of your book that there's a call to action.
Mhm. Yes.
What do you mean by what is the call to action that you would propose us to? I guess
Wow.
maybe a little bit of what you said, but you
Yeah.
can say a little more.
So at the end of the book, so I know that my so in terms of writing the book, I was like, okay, so now that I've given you guys all this information, I've kind of loaded you up on all these different chapters and these dynamics, and it's like, okay, so now what do we do? What do we do as a community of color? What do we do as practitioners, Black practitioners? What do you do as the identified woman who's seeking help? Like, the call to action is to step into a healing space. That's the call to action. But we want women to step into healing spaces that validate their experiences, that see them for exactly who they are with no judgment. We want women to step into spaces where they can talk about things that they have never shared with anyone. We want families to heal. We want communities to heal. But it is about having the conversation that mental health exists. Mental illness is real. Depression is real. The call to action is let's do the work now. Now that you've got the information, or let's create healing spaces for women of color who traditionally have not had those spaces to do the work that they need to do.
Wow. That is so That's so relieving. When I think about a woman that could be in a present day situation, that making that first move, like they say, your environment might not change, but you can change in your environment.
That's right.
The situation may not go away right away, but you can deal with it better when you're getting help. There's like that pressure off of you, like I see a little light at the end of the tunnel. Things are going to get better now, and
Mm-hmm.
like you said, they just have to know that, and proclaim, because once you take a step, you're moving in the direction to make things better for
Absolutely.
yourself. And
Absolutely.
like you
Yeah.
said,
Oh,
just
hope.
yeah,
Instilling hope.
yes, yes. And like you said, the courage, just that little bit of courage and that faith. That's where, like, where, because as a woman of faith, somebody else might diagnose and say, well, do this or do that. But you know what? It's taking that first step of faith to
Yes.
do something, to realize that it is okay to do something, and do it for yourself. Like you say, we help everybody else, do
Yep.
everything for everybody else, do something for yourself, because buying a new bag and getting new shoes and those
Mm.
other outward things are not going to do it.
That.
Temporarily, they'll make you smile for a
Oh
second.
my gosh, that is so true. I can't tell you how many people think that retail therapy You know, the brands that we have, that is not, it doesn't, it is momentary, and it does not heal. It makes you feel good, but it doesn't heal. And the other thing that you mentioned is, when Black women are so apologetic all the time about being who they are, and in every space we go in, we're so apologetic. And one of the things that in therapy, women may start to cry, and they will restrain it. They will hold back,
Mm.
until they can't, until subsequent sessions, finally they feel comfortable crying and they're apologetic. I'm sorry. Like, this is not the place. No, this is not the place for you to be apologetic about crying. Tears are purifying, tears are cleansing, tears have stories. Don't apologize here. I want you to. But it takes a lot for a woman to feel okay, because I guarantee you, between the time they wipe them tears and they
Yeah,
walk out the door, they done fixed everything back. We got everything all
I'm
back,
telling you.
all back together, you know. And that's why I love working with Black women. Like, I've had a couple women, you know, we fix up that outside.
Hmm.
I forget, recently I had one woman who said, listen, it's going to be a hard session, so let me take off these lashes. She took off her lashes and she
Amen.
said,
Ready.
she
Amen.
took them, she said, these were good. She said, these are good ones. She took them off and she put them down. Now, we laughed about that, but I knew she couldn't do that with no white woman. That'd be like shifting your wig. They would have freaked out. Like, what are you doing?
Exposing your whole, yeah,
Yeah,
everything, right?
no, no, no. But it was to the point where she found her space, and when it's time for her to go, she got in that bathroom, fixed herself up, and she went right back into the world, because the world expects something very different of her.
Yeah.
And so that's the call to action. Create that environment where we work, where they can just let their hair down, literally, and be who
Mm.
they need to be, to unmask all of that stuff that they're
Isn't
sitting on, all of that stuff.
isn't that something? That is so awesome. And
Yeah.
I tell you, this book is going to service so many people, as you said. It's going to reach people you can't reach, and you really do need something, because the fact that you say you have so many, had too many clients, you couldn't possibly take on any more. It's good to know that, because some people will just keep taking on people, and and
Oh, they
and
do.
that's when the service
Right.
doesn't get, the quality is lost in
That's
the
right.
numbers, because you don't have the time, and you can only take so much in as an
That's
individual
it.
to,
That's right.
when you're really doing real service,
That's right. That's right.
and so this is just so awesome. I am just so glad that you shared all this with us. And I want to tell also our viewers some of the services that you offer, which is individual therapy, family therapy, adolescent therapy, EAP counseling, clinical supervision and consultation, psychological evaluation, grief counseling, and Christian counseling. So you have an array of things that you are so qualified to do. And one thing I do want to ask you before we even conclude this: do you do are there a few like yourself now that maybe help other ethnicities understand this population, that speak to them, that help teach them and train them?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Awesome question. So last year I went to a conference in Kansas City. Yeah, we were Kansas City. And it was the American Art Therapy Association. And they brought me on to talk just about this. So part of their opening statement was around racial barriers and racial equity, and then they broke off into other things, and they were talking about racial trauma, because last year was, I think, the 200 was the 200 or 400 anniversary
Mm,
of slavery. Gosh, I can't remember,
wow.
but so they wanted it to coincide with that.
Mhm.
And so I was brought on as the keynote to talk about the book, and to talk about how, as non-minority clinicians, you join with working with people of color. But specifically, I spoke about women. And the room was full of about, I want to say 400, 500 people. I could count on my hands the folks of color that were in that room. When I was done, the books I brought with me were sold out. People came up to me and said, thank you. I didn't know. I have so much more to learn. So there are people that are hungry for this information because they don't want to harm clients. They want to do better. They want to know better. And yeah, there's going to be some who cannot do this work with people of color. They just don't have the skill set to do it. And
Right.
good. Then you make friends with clinicians of color and you refer. That's how you
Yes.
do that. You just be very honest about where you are with your skill set or your interest
Mhm.
and say, hey, just like me, I like working with women, but I work with men. But if I find there's a man that I think needs more, who needs a male colleague, I'm going to refer him. I don't,
Yes.
I'm not going to force myself to do something when I know there's someone out there who could do it better. And
Yes. Yes.
so there are those of us out there. Now, there's some people who believe that white people cannot work with Black people. I don't necessarily believe that. I think sometimes it's about quality, it's about sensitivity, and it's about getting supervision. So if
Mhm.
someone comes to me as a white colleague and says, I'm working with this woman of color, and I'm not getting this, I will consult, absolutely. But if I think that you'll do more harm, I'm going to tell you that too. Like, I think you need to refer. I don't think you have the
Good.
bandwidth to understand where this person is coming from. I think they can take some people of color so far and help
Mhm.
certain things, and then maybe refer them to a person to get to deeper level things. So sometimes it's a judgment call sometimes with me when I'm saying, like, I think you should refer versus I think you can do this. Listen, this is what they came to you for. They're not looking for you to rewrite their generational kind of hurt. They're looking for a skill set around how to get along with coworkers. You can do that, but if I think it's something more around race or prejudice, and I'm like, yeah, you need to check yourself first. Have you
Mhm.
checked your biases at the door? Are you working on your own biases before you work with people of color? Because if you haven't, then you need to refer and go do your work first.
Mm. Wow. Are they are they have you experienced to the point where some aren't accepting of that? Will they accept that, or do they look at it as maybe they're incompetent and they don't want to make themselves, or are they professional enough to say, you know what, maybe I can't. I'm going to refer them to
I've
someone.
seen both. I've seen both. I've seen some who take it well and like, great, thank you. I know what I need to do. I know where to go. And I think some people, I look at it as a business. It's money.
Exactly.
And then we have people of color who live in areas where there just aren't clinicians of color. So they got to work with what they can get,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately.
Mm, wow. Well, I tell you, this has been so revelatory, really, in a sense, to put things in perspective, dealing with women of color. And I pray and trust that the viewers on the Well After Hours will be able to see this and feel comfortable about, where we sit, where we stand, and about actually getting the necessary help and getting direction in what we need, and be encouraged, that it's not unusual, you're not alone. And that, we can get through this, we must get through this, and I don't mean just the coronavirus, I'm talking about life itself, because life
Mhm,
throws all kinds of things at us. But
mhm,
I believe that, we were built, God built us to be able to go through the trauma, but to do the work. It's not just simple, but there are things that we can do, that we can come into knowing, you know,
yeah,
getting that knowledge and having a professional that will, help walk us through things. And so I thank you so much for
absolutely.
being with us again.
You're welcome.
As
You're
I
very
said
welcome.
before, this is the second time, but it's not even the last second time that we can call upon you, um,
Mhm.
at different periods and intervals that can help us get through things and inform us, keep us informed, and highlight different things. So Dr. Clack, thank you
You're
so
welcome. You're
much.
very welcome.
Appreciate that.
No
And
problem.
so I guess, like I said, where is your book available? I'm going to put information online
Yeah,
too.
so
They go
it's
to
on,
Amazon.
you can get it on, yeah, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it from my website. If you can get it on Amazon, go for it, because people said it's cheaper than what's on my website. I don't know how they do that.
Because they buy in big bulk. Yeah, they
Oh,
buy in big bulk. And
oh,
yeah, so that's why it costs, it's more expensive for you to produce the book than for
yeah.
me, because of the deals that they work out. That's why
Oh,
everything
yeah. That makes sense. Okay, you can get it from Amazon. You can get it from my website, but of course, it's going to probably be more from my website. But
not that much more,
it's
really.
not that
It's
much
not that
more.
much more.
It's not. It's not. I try to work
Yeah,
with
you to
folks.
get a nice autographed copy, I'd like to order it
Yes,
from
that
your
is
website.
true. You get an autographed copy. I do sign every book that leaves
Yeah.
my inventory. That is true. That is
So,
true.
yeah.
Yes.
So, well, that's great. So, well, thank you so much again
You're
for being
welcome.
on the Well After Hours again, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Looking forward to the viewers of the Well After Hour. Don't forget, every Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Facebook page Beverly D. Allen, YouTube channel Beverly D. Allen Ministries LLC, and we'll look for you again to gather with us around the well. Okay, so have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next Thursday on the Well After Hours. God bless you. Bye.
Bye.